Sometimes the internet throws you a story and you just
Yeah.
have to stop. Or
Yeah.
it just stops you in your tracks.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think we can all agree the story of Peanut the Squirrel is one of those.
Oh, absolutely.
It had all the makings of a viral sensation.
Right.
This adorable rescued squirrel just living the good life with his human dad,
Yeah.
racking up hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram.
Crazy.
But then out of nowhere,
yeah,
it takes this incredibly dark turn.
it does.
And I bet, like me, you're left just wondering what really happened.
Definitely.
So today we're going to deep dive into the story of Peanut,
Oh,
sifting through news articles, social media posts,
that's right.
trying to understand the events that led to his tragic ending.
Yeah. It's interesting how this story has resonated with so many people.
Totally.
It really highlights our complex relationship with animals, especially those that kind of blur the lines between wild and domesticated.
You see, Peanut, in these videos, snuggled up with Mark Longo, his caretaker,
Yeah.
and your heart just melts.
Yes.
They had this undeniable bond.
You can see it.
But then you learn about the DEC raid, the seizure,
Yeah.
and ultimately Peanut's death.
And it's just
jarring.
It really is.
It leaves you with so many questions.
So many questions. And that's what makes the story so compelling, but also so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It forces us to confront these uncomfortable questions about animal welfare, legal gray areas, and ultimately who gets to decide what's best for an animal in these unique circumstances.
Okay, so let's rewind to the beginning.
Okay.
Who is Mark Longo, and how did he come to be Peanut's caretaker?
So Mark Longo is an animal lover,
Okay.
lives in New York, seems to have a special knack for rescuing and caring for animals, particularly ones that most people would consider wild.
Yeah.
He found Peanut abandoned as a tiny baby after the squirrel's mother was tragically hit by a car.
Oh, that poor little thing.
Yeah.
No wonder he couldn't survive on his own.
Exactly. And it seems that Peanut, imprinted on Longo, became so accustomed to human care that a return to the wild just wasn't a viable option.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Longo took him in, and over time, they developed this incredibly close bond. And that's where the Instagram fame comes in, right?
Precisely. Longo starts sharing videos of their daily life together.
Yeah.
And people were just instantly captivated by Peanut's playful antics and their connection.
Right.
He amassed over 500,000 followers.
Wow.
Not bad for a squirrel from upstate New York.
That is some serious star power.
I
It
know.
seems like their story really resonated with people.
Yeah.
Just looking for a bit of wholesome content online.
Absolutely.
But then,
Yeah.
this idyllic life was shattered by this sudden raid on Longo's home
Right.
by the New York Department of Environmental Conservation.
Right.
What can you tell us about that?
From the information we've gathered, the DEC showed up at Longo's home with a search warrant,
Okay.
multiple officers, a full-on operation.
Oh, wow.
It seems they were responding to complaints about Longo keeping wildlife illegally.
So what exactly was he doing that was considered illegal?
Well, New York, like many states, has very specific laws about owning wildlife.
Okay.
You typically need permits.
Right.
And it appears Longo didn't have the necessary paperwork for Peanut
Okay.
or another animal in his care, a raccoon named Fred.
I see. So even if you're rescuing an animal and caring for it with the best intentions,
Yeah,
there are still legal hoops you have to jump through.
certainly. And that's where things get complicated.
Okay.
Longo claims he was in the process of obtaining an educational animal certification,
Okay.
which would allow him to legally possess and exhibit certain animals.
Oh, okay.
But this process isn't a quick one.
Now, I'm curious about this certification process.
Yeah.
What does it entail, and how long does it typically take to obtain?
It's a bit of a gray area.
Yeah.
Obtaining an educational animal certification in New York involves a fairly rigorous process.
Okay.
Applicants must demonstrate extensive knowledge about the species,
Wow.
have appropriate housing and enclosures,
Okay.
and develop educational programs that meet specific criteria.
So it's not just having a nice cage
No.
and feeding them.
No.
Okay.
It can take months,
Really?
if not longer,
Wow.
to complete the application process and receive approval.
So in Longo's case, he was kind of in limbo,
It sounds like it.
caring for these animals that he clearly loved,
Yes.
but trying to navigate this bureaucratic process. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
before he could get that certification, the DEC intervened.
It did.
And the consequences were devastating.
Yes.
Not just for Longo,
Right.
but also, tragically, for Peanut and Fred.
Yes, both animals were seized by the DEC during the raid. And shortly after, news broke that they had both been euthanized by the state.
I remember seeing Longo's Instagram post after it happened.
I can only imagine.
Just absolutely gut-wrenching. He was clearly heartbroken.
Absolutely.
And deeply traumatized by the whole experience.
Of course.
He talked about feeling like a criminal,
Yeah.
having his home invaded,
Right.
and ultimately losing his beloved companions.
And his reaction certainly resonated with a lot of people.
I bet.
The public outcry was swift and intense.
I remember.
Social media exploded.
It did.
With people expressing outrage and disbelief.
Oh, yeah?
Even Elon Musk weighed in.
Really?
Tweeting about the perceived injustice of the situation.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a massive story. It quickly gained national attention. And it tapped into something, I think, deeper than just outrage over a squirrel's death. It raised questions about the rigidity of our legal systems, the role of compassion in animal welfare, and the complexities of navigating human-wildlife interactions in this increasingly urbanized world.
What's fascinating here
is
how this seemingly isolated incident became this lightning rod for a much broader conversation about our evolving relationship with animals.
Exactly. And we're just scratching the surface here.
Right.
We'll be back in a moment to delve deeper into the legal complexities.
Okay.
The controversy surrounding the euthanization and the bigger questions raised by Peanut's story.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've established there are strict laws governing wildlife ownership in New York. And Longo was seemingly caught in this bureaucratic web trying to obtain the proper certifications while caring for Peanut and Fred. But the question that's on everyone's mind is, why euthanasia?
Right.
Couldn't Peanut have been relocated or sent to a sanctuary?
That's the question that has fueled so much of the outrage and debate surrounding this case. And it brings us to the heart of the issue. New York State's rabies testing mandate.
So explain this mandate to me.
Sure.
It seems that even if there's no indication that an animal is rabid, testing is automatic after seizure.
Unfortunately, that seems to be the case.
Oh, wow.
When an animal is seized under these circumstances, New York state law mandates rabies testing. And the current testing protocol requires brain tissue, meaning the test is fatal.
That seems incredibly harsh, especially considering Peanut was a beloved pet. With no history of aggression or exposure to rabies? It feels like common sense and compassion were just completely absent from this decision.
You're not alone in that sentiment.
Really?
Many people have argued that Peanut's specific situation warranted a more nuanced approach. He was a healthy animal, living in a domestic environment with regular vet checkups. The risk of rabies seemed incredibly low.
And that's where the calls for sanctuary placement come in. A lot of people have been asking why Peanut couldn't have been sent to a sanctuary instead of being euthanized. Could you shed some light on how that process works?
Of course.
And what the potential roadblocks might be?
So sanctuaries play a crucial role in providing care for animals that can't be returned to the wild, whether due to injury, habituation to humans, or other factors. They offer a safe haven and often focus on education and conservation efforts.
So hypothetically, could a squirrel like Peanut find a place in a sanctuary?
It's possible. There are sanctuaries that specialize in smaller mammals. And some might have been willing to take in Peanut. However, sanctuaries are often operating at or near capacity.
I see.
With limited resources.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I imagine there's also a lot of red tape involved.
Oh, absolutely.
In transferring animals across state lines.
Yes.
Especially those classified as wildlife.
There are strict regulations and permits that need to be obtained. And the process can be quite lengthy and complex.
I bet.
It's not as simple as just finding an open spot and sending an animal on its way.
So even if a suitable sanctuary had been identified for Peanut, there were still significant logistical and legal hurdles to overcome. And unfortunately, in this case, the system failed to consider those alternative options.
And this is where the larger conversation about nuisance animals comes into play. The classification carries a lot of weight and often dictates how an animal is treated within the legal system.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit.
Sure.
What exactly constitutes a nuisance animal? And how does that label affect decisions about care or relocation?
So nuisance animal is a broad term that can encompass a wide range of species.
Okay.
It's typically applied to animals that are perceived as posing a threat to public safety, property, or the environment. This could include animals that exhibit aggressive behavior, damage crops or gardens, or carry diseases.
So in Peanut's case, even though he was a beloved pet, the fact that he was a squirrel, a species sometimes labeled as a nuisance, likely work against him.
That's a valid point.
Okay.
The nuisance label carries a certain stigma, and it can often lead to a less compassionate approach to handling these animals. Relocation or sanctuary placement might be deemed less desirable if the animal is perceived as inherently problematic.
It's almost like we're stuck in this outdated mindset where certain animals are simply categorized as good or bad. And that categorization dictates their fate.
It ignores the individual animal circumstances and the potential for peaceful coexistence.
That's a really thoughtful observation.
Thanks.
And it speaks to a larger philosophical question. How do we reconcile our desire to protect wildlife and ecosystems with the reality that individual animals often fall through the cracks of our systems and regulations?
It's a tough question, and there are no easy answers. But I think Peanut's story is a powerful reminder that we need more nuanced approaches to animal welfare.
Totally.
We need to move beyond rigid classifications and embrace case-by-case assessments that consider the individual animal's needs and circumstances.
I think that's a crucial takeaway from this whole ordeal.
Absolutely.
We can't simply rely on blanket rules and regulations.
No.
We need compassion, critical thinking, and a willingness to adapt our approaches to ensure the well-being of all animals, regardless of their species or nuisance status.
Peanut's story has definitely shaken things up and forced us to re-examine our assumptions about animal welfare.
It's tragic, yes, but it's also a catalyst for change.
Indeed, it sparked a much-needed dialogue about the complexities of human-wildlife interactions, the limitations of our current systems, and the urgent need for more compassionate and individualized approaches to animal care.
We've covered a lot of ground here. But there's still so much to discuss.
Absolutely.
After a quick break, we'll be back to explore potential solutions.
Okay.
The impact of this story on the animal welfare movement. And what we can all do to make a difference.
Sounds good.
It's clear that Peanut's story has touched a nerve. Sparked outrage, grief, and a whole lot of soul-searching about how we as a society treat animals.
Absolutely.
It's easy to get lost in the sadness of it all.
But
I think it's important to shift our focus to what we can learn from this experience.
Absolutely.
And how we can channel those emotions into meaningful action.
I couldn't agree more. Peanut's legacy shouldn't be defined solely by tragedy. It should also be a catalyst for positive change in the realm of animal welfare.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
What are some of the key takeaways from this whole ordeal? What can we do, both individually and collectively, to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, first and foremost, Peanut's story underscores the critical importance of awareness.
Okay.
It's brought to light the often hidden world of wildlife ownership, the complexities of caring for animals that can't survive in the wild, and the ethical dilemmas that arise when human actions intersect with the natural world. We need to keep this conversation going to educate ourselves and others about these issues.
Absolutely. We need to move beyond those simplistic, cute animal videos on social media and delve deeper into the realities of responsible animal care and the laws that govern it.
Knowledge is power. And the more we understand, the better equipped we'll be to advocate for change.
Another crucial takeaway is the importance of empathy. And compassion.
Absolutely.
It's easy to judge Longo for his actions. But it's vital to remember that he was operating from a place of love and a desire to care for these animals.
Of course.
We need to approach these situations with understanding and a willingness to see things from multiple perspectives.
I think that's such an important point.
It's
not about condoning actions that might be technically illegal, but rather recognizing that good intentions don't always align perfectly with the letter of the law. And sometimes those laws need to be re-examined and updated to reflect our evolving understanding of animal welfare and the unique bonds that can form between humans and other species.
Precisely. And that brings us to another critical step.
Okay.
Advocacy.
Yes.
We can't just sit back and hope things will change on their own.
Right.
We need to actively engage with our elected officials, support organizations, working on animal welfare issues.
Absolutely.
And make our voices heard on these matters.
There are already petitions circulating online.
I saw those.
Demanding reform of New York's wildlife laws.
Yeah.
Which is a great place to start.
Yeah. And we can also support organizations like wildlife rehabilitators.
Absolutely.
And sanctuaries that are doing incredible work to care for animals in need.
100%.
It's about creating this ripple effect of awareness and action that can lead to lasting systemic change.
Yes.
Peanut's story, though tragic, doesn't have to be in vain. We can honor his memory by working towards a world where animals are treated with the respect, compassion, and understanding they deserve.
And that brings me to a final thought I'd like to leave you with.
Okay.
Peanut's story has forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our relationship with the natural world. It's challenged our assumptions about what it means to be wild and domestic. And it's highlighted the ethical gray areas we navigate as we strive to coexist with other species on this planet. There are no easy answers, but it's a conversation we must continue to have.
Peanut's story is a wake-up call. A reminder that our actions have consequences, intended and unintended.
Absolutely.
It's a call to action to be more informed, more compassionate, and more proactive in our efforts to create a world where both humans and animals can thrive.
Well said. Let Peanut's story be a catalyst for positive change in your own life and in the world around you. Go out there and make a difference.
You would like that.
I think so.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Absolutely.
It's been a heavy one for sure.
It has.
But I hope it's left you with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to being a voice for animals. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep advocating for a better future for all beings.
Well said.